Hello everyone, bienvenidos. Thanks for tuning in, transmitting to you straight out of the lovely New England area. I'm your host, Kenny Dreadful, aka the Macabre Minister, and as always by my side is the ever so lovely Mama Misterio. Hey Mama, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay, baby. A little hype. Our channel is growing, so you know I'm pumped. What do we have on the agenda today?
Well, tonight on VSAD, young boys hide inside a house of horrors. A person is visited by the Men in Black, Ted Bundy's ghoul, and Super Blood Wolf Moon Meteor. All that tonight on Viewer Stories.
After Dark.
Yeah. Our first story comes from Anonymous of Somerset, Pennsylvania.
My whole life, I've never believed in anything, especially not concerning the paranormal or the supernatural. That most definitely includes aliens. But after what happened to me days before the fall of 2001, I have no further doubt in my mind that we are not being told the truth about this subject. I was at home watching the news, but then around 8 p.m., I started to tremble. I have diabetes, so my sugar was very low because I had forgotten to eat all day. I went to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich and some coffee. I fed my dog and sat with my food in front of the TV set. I fell asleep with the TV on. I woke up to some static sounds around 11:15. What happened next has turned me into a recluse. I work from home, I don't have friends, and I don't go out. Not anymore. I tried to figure out what was happening to the TV. No channel was working. I turned it off and went to the bathroom. Then I started messing with my radio and got the same thing, more static. Once I gave up on that, I saw from the corner of my eye lights flickering from my windows. I walked slowly and peeked through the curtains. I saw a huge sphere-shaped object floating in the middle of the street on my block. Every other house on my street had all their lights off, and it was like a ghost town. Other than that thing, all of a sudden, some black cars drove up out of nowhere. Some very tall men with black suits and bowler hats got out and started to examine the object. It was about 20 dudes. The odd thing is that it was so quiet outside. No noise was coming from anywhere. My heart started to pound. My breaths were becoming shallow and fast-paced. One of the men noticed me. I panicked and darted toward my bedroom. I got my gun out of the safe and stood quietly about 10 feet from my door. How the hell did he even notice me? I thought. It's like they could hear my heart pounding or something. I tried to call the police, but the phone line was dead. Someone started banging on my front door, then my back door. Before I knew it, the banging was in the walls. I let out a shrieking scream as I darted out of my room with the intention of standing my ground. Stupid, I know, but as soon as I started what I thought was going to be my blaze of glory, the banging stopped and was replaced with the sound of running. I sheepishly peeked out of my blinds to see those men scurrying back to their vehicles, and that floating thing was gone. I noticed that one of the men had some sort of fluid dripping out of his ear. It was like blood, but seemed more like the color of charcoal liquid that doctors give to people who OD on pills. They all sped off so fast. Again, no sound from the cars. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked a few of my neighbors if any of them heard anything notable that night. Nothing. Most of my neighbors go to bed early, but this was ridiculous. One thing they did all say was that they fell asleep around 8 p.m. the night before while watching the news. Fast forward a few weeks, I was at work submitting some paperwork. One of my coworkers said that I had a phone call on line 4. When I picked up the phone, a man tells me the following. Don't speak, just listen. The men you saw in your house were not human. These guys are the ones they send when there's an encounter anywhere on Earth. They have been watching you since that night. Do not interact with them or talk about your experience with anyone. They will never stop watching you. Then, I just heard a click. I tried to see if I could get the number from the caller ID, but to no avail. That night, while asleep, I had a dream that made my fears even worse. I saw myself peeking out of my window just as I did that fateful night. But this time, instead of a sphere, I saw a school bus. I saw those men in black guiding children of all ages into the bus. Their faces looked pale and had a blank expression. They looked drugged and tired. I looked up at the sky and I saw the clouds parting as they spelled something out. It read cover-up. After that night, I started seeing those men everywhere, always in pairs and watching me. They weren't even hiding the fact that they were following me. I would even see them parked outside my house, so I told my boss that I wouldn't be able to come into work anymore. He's a nice guy, so he just lets me fax everything in. This is what turned me into a hermit. I am homebound over something that I still don't fully understand. I stopped seeing those men a few weeks after I started working from home. I do everything online. I know this all sounds crazy, but I know what I saw. Anonymous from Somerset, Pennsylvania.
That's why you should just stay in your house and don't be nosy.
That's me.
Nah, man, that's one of the first things you learn in the hood.
But still, if you have to be a prisoner in your own home, that's not fair, man.
Tell you what though, that dream was trippy.
Yeah, that was sick. Interesting symbolism. So our most recent blood moon had an interesting turn of events. It happened on the 20th, and it appears that a meteor hit the moon during an eclipse. So that's interesting.
Or maybe it wasn't a meteor. Maybe it was Space Force.
It's scary to think that we may be living in a sci-fi era soon. It's being seriously talked about now. It's exciting too, but also creepy. This used to be movie and TV stuff.
Come on, boo. Predictive programming. You know what's up.
Yeah, but it's getting scarier now. So let's move on to our second story. This is from Big City Willie 212 from New York. Take it away, honey.
I was about 9 years of age. My friends and I would often leave the safety of the schoolyard and roam the neighborhood at recess. My best bud at the time was Scott. We'd buy candy, toss rocks into the river, and visit nearby playgrounds. Boys from junior high would bully us. One cold and cloudy day, they crossed the line. Steven, the smallest of our group, was having an asthma attack, but they took his inhaler and wouldn't give it back. Scott and I were big for our age, and together, we stood up to them. An ominous thunder boomed. Scott picked up a rock and threw it at a boy named Jamal. It hit his forehead regrettably, but he dropped the inhaler. Everyone paused a moment. I picked up the inhaler and gave it to Steven. Raindrops started to fall. Jamal's forehead trickled blood. Our other friends ran, prompting Scott and I to run. We booked it towards Scott's neighborhood, Jamal in hot pursuit. Across from Scott's home was a lot with an unsightly abandoned house. A couple of locked gates and a tall wooden fence kept it off limits. It was in sore need of renovations or demolition. It gave me goosebumps each time I'd walk by, and Scott absolutely hated it. Scott knew of a loose board around the back, and we used it, barely squeezing through. Heavy rain began falling, drenching us both within seconds. We peeked through a crack and spotted Jamal run past. I let out a sigh of relief. I noticed the grounds were in desperate need of landscaping and trash removal. Scott said that for as long as he could remember, the house had stood vacant. A family had been executed inside, gangland style, back in the 50s. The house was then purchased by the mafia and kept empty for 30 years, reasons unknown. Scott's neighborhood was a mix of mostly Italian and Irish families. On the corner was a swanky and exclusive Italian restaurant. Expensive cars with men in fancy suits and beautiful women would go in to drink and dine. Scott told me they were mafia and that people from the neighborhood were part of it. I had no clue what a mafia was. He showed me a movie on his new Betamax called The Godfather. He surmised that the abandoned house was, and I quote, a cemetery house. People had been buried inside and even murdered. From his bedroom window, one can see the back of the cemetery house. He has heard and seen strange happenings in the middle of the night. He told me that Bad Luck Louie, a notorious gambler, drinker and loudmouth from the neighborhood, has been missing for over a year and is buried there. His evidence, a keychain that Louie always hung from his belt. It had a 4-leaf clover and a rabbit's foot. He saw it in the backyard of cemetery house. Blood on the rabbit's foot when he mistakenly threw a ball into the yard one day and came across it. I wanted to leave, but Scott said Jamal might catch us and suggested we go inside cemetery house and get out of the rain. Scott proceeded in alone. I mulled the idea over for a minute or two, then went inside. Surprisingly enough, the back door wasn't locked. The house was leaky. Rain made its way inside. It was cold, lit only by natural light from the outside. I called out to Scott. I heard his voice, but couldn't tell where it was coming from. I saw a door. It led to the basement. Do I dare head down? I heard Scott yell. It sounded like it came from down the hall. Basement crisis averted. I saw Scott backing slowly away from a door until he pressed against the wall. I walked up to him, turned, and looked in. It was a bathroom. A repulsing odor filled it. A trail of dried blood led to the bathtub. A mound of clothes off in the corner. A flashlight on the sink. I moved the moldy shower curtain, disturbing a group of flies. I swatted at them and looked down into the tub. To my dismay, I saw a dismembered body. The eyes on the face of the severed head stared back at me. I turned and vomited my lunch. I walked over to Scott. He was in shock. I turned and saw Bad Luck Louie. He was alive. He didn't say a word. He just pointed down to the basement. Scott wanted to leave, but I wanted to know what was inside the basement. I grabbed the flashlight off the sink and we all went down into the basement. In it were bloodied tools and bottles of chemicals, metal barrels and plastic bags. A large table with straps. Bad Luck Louie pointed to a bag in the corner. I went over past Louie and looked inside. It couldn't be. Inside was Louie's body, his throat slit. I turned quickly and Louie was gone. I grabbed Scott and we flew out of there and we didn't look back. Scott and I are still friends to this day. That experience bonding us closer than ever. Wow, they truly endured traumatizing experiences that day. Brave kids.
Well, that was creepy.
Organized crime affects us all, whether indirectly or, like in this case, directly.
I hear you. But honestly, I'm more scared of Jamal than Louie's ghost. I hate police.
I know, right? But Bad Luck Louie, though, I mean, damn.
Yeah, that was messed up too. Like, why they always gotta kill the town drunk, man? That's cold. Even in the movies. What, they killed the drunk guy?
So, Mama Mysterio, I read that an ex-cop turned medium, Bobby Marquezo of the Netflix show Conversations with a Serial Killer, claims that he made contact with Ted Bundy's ghoul. And yes, I said ghoul, while visiting his murder sites. He said he had to advise a woman against holding a seance near one of the sites because he feared the ghoul would harm her and possess her.
I wonder why he said ghoul instead of ghost. Was it like a pun or something? We need to look that over again.
He said that of all the murderous spirits he's encountered, Bundy's was one of the most powerful.
I bet it was. That guy was a demon.
He also said that Bundy had two spirits, a duality about him, one charming and the other dark. And he was proud of his murders too, giving him a wicked smile because he could actually see these things.
Psychos can be charming though. Like Hitler had a lot of charisma, that's why he was able to convince people so easily.
And the guy with the Kool-Aid. Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah, Jim Jones.
Him too.
Yeah, he was crazy too. Those people are nasty.
Charles Manson, another one.
Yeah, and people just followed them blindly.
Must be on something other than Kool-Aid. Anyway, everyone, that was the end of the show. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. And Mama Mysterio has a special message for you.
Oh yeah. So we have a very big collab with about, I think 6 or 7 other channels. So there is a possibility that we may not upload anything else after this until the 10th. And that is when this collab is going to drop. It's going to be uploaded on that other channel. We will make announcements on our social media, so please make sure that you follow the links below because that is where you are going to find where our new video is going to be posted. If this works out and if we don't upload something else.
Thank you so very much, and as always, vaya con Dios.
Bye bye.